Hi, this is Joni Sweetland. Welcome to the Strong Women, Stronger World podcast, where each episode we interview different leaders to help accelerate your leadership learning, challenge you to take risks to advance your own career, and teach you how to lead from inside out. My comments and insights are based on my own experience, which span a 27-year career in global management consulting, including 18 as a partner. This podcast is meant to inspire and empower you to action. It is time to step into your power. The world needs more women leaders. Together, we are strong. Strong women, stronger world. Our topic today is manifesting goals with our special guest, Amanda Moskowitz. You are in for a special treat, as not only Amanda, one of the nicest, most down-to-earth human beings, she is a social activist who inspires you. Amanda is a creative writer based in North Potomac, Maryland. She is the playwright and co-producer of I Am Her, a profound and moving play on the lasting complexities of sexual trauma. I Am Her premiered in October of 2019 to sold-out audiences at the Woolly Mammoth Theater Company in Washington, D.C., and opened to critical acclaim. The play is a launchpad for creating a packaged curriculum, I Am Her Productions, complete with stage direction, discussion guides, and resources that youth and community groups can use to address sexual trauma and broaden the conversation on this complex issue. When she's not working on I Am Her Productions, Amanda channels her creative energy and social activism into the form of children's books. She has self-published 2 books, Alice the Bee and the Cherry Trees, and Baba the Monkey and All That Noise. Amanda is currently working on a publication entitled Kids in COVID, Big Experiences from Little Ones, which will be a curated collection of COVID-19 stories submitted by kids for kids and adults too. Welcome, Amanda, to our show.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, it's so humbling to read those words back to me. Like, oh wow.
You are amazing. We are so lucky to have you on the show today. And I know, Amanda, you have such a powerful story and you have so much courage and willingness to share your story with others. Let's just start by you sharing your story with our listeners.
Sure. And I think with anyone, that's always a tough question to ask because it's kind of, you think about, well, where do you start? Because everything's all interconnected. For this particular topic where we're talking about manifesting goals, I really want to focus on the beginning of my journey with the play. It started in 2018. The Me Too movement was kind of at its, I don't want to say height because I think that it's still going on and it's still going up and still growing. But it was really when it was getting momentum. I am part of an organization, Jewish Women International. They were curating stories from their membership to anonymize them and then share them as part of a panel in kind of this interfaith discussion around the Me Too within the secular communities. And when they sent out that call, I started to kind of craft my response and my experience with sexual assault and abuse. And in doing so, I kind of had this light bulb moment of, instead of anonymizing these stories, what if we curate them and actually turn it into a play and perform it and put it up there on stage? And in my head, I was kind of thinking the vagina monologues from the 90s. A lot of people nod their head when I say that word. But all of these intersecting stories overlapping where you can see the themes and how there's this wide spectrum of sexual abuse, assault, and harassment, but kind of the outcome and the impact ends up being a lot of the same emotions, a lot of the same repercussions, etc. And I had this light bulb moment And I was like, well, somebody should write that play. And I looked around and I was talking to myself. Like there was nobody else there. And that was the moment where I kind of stepped up and said, well, this is my idea. I think it's worth pursuing. I'm going to step up and do it. And in that same moment that I got an email from JWI, I Googled, how do you write a play?
I love that.
Don't recommend that. It's not a great place to start. But that was the first step in me saying, I see an opportunity to do something about a topic I care about, and I'm going to step in and do it. I have no idea what I'm doing. I had been in like 2 theater productions when I was 8 and 9 years old. I was an extra in Heidi and Pippi Longstocking, but I knew nothing of theater. I knew nothing of even writing a play, even though my entire career has been based in writing. So this was my way of kind of stepping up into something that I saw value in. And then even more so than that, this is a story that I love to tell. It's a story within a story. I was kind of in the process of writing. I was probably about a month into my content, and throughout this process, I ended up discovering that I myself had multiple versions of sexual abuse and trauma, a re-victimization of sorts. And one night, I blacked out, and I was bombarded with images of sexual abuse in my childhood. And it really paralyzed me, physically, emotionally, and mentally. I had known that it had happened, but it had been blocked so far back in the recourses of my mind that it I didn't realize the extent and the duration that it went on for. And that next day, after I had gone through this and had the support of my husband and a few close friends, I kind of, just powered through a little bit. And I was supposed to go to a fundraising event that evening. And I was like, I cannot put on a dress. I cannot put on a face. I cannot small talk with anyone. This is just not in the cards for tonight. I got a call from my manager, and she was like, please, can you go? Nobody else can attend. It's really important for the organization. So after a few hours, I was like, you know what? I can do this. Maybe it's the thing I need to distract myself. Maybe some doing good in the community will make me feel better, So I went, and at this event, I see this woman, and she looks very familiar to me. So I walk up, and we're all wearing name tags. So I introduced myself, and as Amanda, and the woman that I introduced myself to was Mimi Brodsky-Kress. And we were kind of just chit-chatting and how we connected and not connected. And she's like, oh, I know your mother-in-law. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's kind of it. So we met, and then we disbanded. I was like, that's not it. I know her from something else. So I Googled her name on my phone while I was there. And it turns out that Mimi was a member of JWI. Not only a member, but she was one of the women to watch from a previous year. I'm like, that's how I know her. I saw her speak, and I was inspired by her. So I went back to Mimi, and I said, you're from JWI, and I saw you speak, and you were so inspiring. I have this idea for a play that was actually came about because of JWI. Can I talk to you about it? And she said, yes, absolutely. And she gave me my card. The next day, or the next week, Monday, I believe it was, we met for coffee. Turns out Mimi knows everyone in Montgomery County. Not only that, but all of the theater people. Mimi had read the draft of my script. She read my project plan, and she's like, I would love to produce this with you. And thus began a journey of a year and a half of from coffee to conversations to a script to a full-blown production. And Mimi is still my mentor, best friend, and producer to this day. And it was all because I stepped up and I stepped forward and I saw an opportunity. And the serendipity of that moment the day before, I had been re-traumatized by memories of sexual trauma. And the next day, I forced myself to go to an event that I really didn't want to, which brought me to this person who then opened up every single opportunity that I needed. And so that is part of stepping up into your goals and trusting your instinct and just being open for opportunities. So I love that story. Mimi, I know you're listening and I love you. But you just never know how a hello at an event, or remember those things that we used to go to? But you never know how that is going to profoundly just change your life. And that is a perfect example of that
Amanda,
happening.
there's so much that you just shared with us that we are so grateful for. You started out even talking about with your goals, sometimes just go without knowing. And the fact that you're
Mm-hmm.
able to, get that courage to just start, even if you didn't know where, and that is Googling, just to figure out what you need to know, right?
Right.
And but going without knowing, that's just such a beautiful lesson.
And I love the way you
And
said
just
that. That's,
allowing life
yeah.
to unfold for you, which it did so
Yeah.
beautifully. um, and
Mm-hmm.
then first of all, the experience, the traumatic memories and things that came back to you, because there are listeners who have experienced sexual trauma. I can't remember the exact statistic, but I think it's 1 in 4 women have experienced
Yep.
sexual trauma. Stop and think about that. I mean, how many women do you know in your life? 1 in 4 of them have gone through some sort of sexual victimization.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
unacceptable, but it's a reality that needs to be dealt with. And what you are talking about here is, as you're going through this process, it's almost like a healing that is coming to bear
Oh,
for
yeah.
you through this process. And I just want to say, God bless Mimi. This is I don't even know her, but I love her, right? We all need Mimis in our life. And the only way we're
Yeah.
going to meet the Mimis in our life is by doing what you did, which is taking a step forward, going to the networking events. And even if right now that's online, but when it's available to you, connect with people and people you don't know, because you just don't know who that next person, what might unfold together.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think the other really important takeaway from that is from the start, from the beginning, Mimi understood what I wanted to do and was my partner through and through. And I didn't mean to have that rhyme, but I think that, as you're networking and as you're meeting people, you're going to find people that you click with and you're going to find people that you don't. And it's okay to not have every interaction turn into a lifelong friendship or mentorship. But to your point about being open and stepping out. And for me, that's very natural. I'm an extrovert. I'm type A. I love socializing and connecting. For other people, that's a lot more difficult. And so, whatever way that makes you feel comfortable, but also just trusting your instinct that the moment I sat down with Mimi and she knew exactly what I wanted to do and wanted to help me get there, was that was also very reassuring. And so it could have very much gone the other way, which is, this is a great idea. I have somebody else who I think would be a better writer than you. Like, it could have gone, and then I could have said, you know what, thank you for your time, and I could have moved on. Luckily for me, that wasn't the case. But for your listeners that are out there, it's also that being discretionary and selective in those relationships, making sure that they're aligned with your goals and what you want to do, and that you can each bring something to the
I
table.
I love that. There's just so
Um,
many good nuggets in there for us. And I think you brought up just some really good points. We can be discretionary, and it's important that we are. I love being open and meeting a variety of people, but that doesn't mean that each person um, is someone that you're definitely going to connect with, and that's okay. That's absolutely
Hmm.
okay. I think that is so
Yeah.
beautiful. As I think about you and manifesting your goals, um, you took something that was so personal in your own story, and you put that on a stage. Wow.
Yeah. I it's been a long time, with COVID. I haven't, plans for I Am Her have kind of shifted as a result of, as all things have, but it's been a while since I talked about it. And so to go back and think, wow, I actually did that. Like I wrote and what? Like, so it does feel surreal, but I also think it shows you what you are capable of. Um, uh, and I think it's a good segue into the second point that I wanted to make as part of this conversation is that I did not do that alone. Yes, it was my idea. Yes, it was my story, but every person that we brought into the production, from the director to our dramaturg, which I didn't even know was a thing before I started writing a play, even to our actors and our stage technicians, every single one of those people brought something to the production that made it better. I love telling this story of we were sitting and doing table work, which was brand new to me. So that for those that don't know, you're sitting with the script and you are talking the lines out, and then you kind of go through and then you go back and you change words and okay, well, what does this look like visually on the stage? For me as a writer, that was a really big transition. I am used to writing books and stories, not a play. And there's a huge difference because when you're reading, you have to describe everything. When it's on a stage, you don't. You don't have to say, I feel angry, because the actor's face is going to show that they are angry, right? So part of that was that dramaturg. Laura was our dramaturg, and she really helped coach me through that shift of writing. But going back to the story of the table work, so we're all sitting there, and it was a scene in the play where the young Anna was with her therapist, and it wasn't quite like there was all these questions like, why is Anna seeing a therapist? How long have they been seeing each other? What what is their relationship like? What is the therapist like? Is she helpful? Is she not? So there's all this like context behind the scene that wasn't actually part of the dialogue, but it needed to be there for the actors to understand how they were going to relate to each other. And the actors asked me, hey, would it be okay if we just kind of improv this? And I was like, absolutely. And the two of them, it was so amazing to watch. um, they stood up and they each went to different corners of the room. They took a moment and they kind of like shook themselves off and shook themselves on into character. Came to stage and we recorded it, and they completely ad libbed it, and it was perfect. It was it was the scene. It's what became the scene for that moment, and they they came out of it and they're like, "Did you like that?" I'm like, "Oh my gosh, did I?" Like I loved it. And one of the things I heard from the actors was that they rarely get to influence a script. Usually a playwright is and a producer and a director are very like, "This is it. This is what we want. It's not changing." And so the collaboration that took place and every element, they brought them their full selves to the table. And I was able to take advantage of it. And the play became that much stronger. And so there's this element of manifesting your goals that requires you to kind of step aside and surround yourself with people that are aligned to your mission, but may come at it from a different perspective, will have some value to add. And that was just an amazing thing to watch. The other oh, I love talking about it. So I'm so sorry. But the other really great examples we had, there was elements of music that I wanted to incorporate from an artist, Shannon Curtis, who wrote the soundtrack to my life, but more specifically this play. And I was working with the director. I'm like, how do we weave in the music? Because Shannon's music actually helped me write the actual play. I listened to it constantly while I was drafting. And Tony said, "Is it okay if you just trust me to figure that out?" And I said, "Yes, I can." And what she did was brilliant. I think majority of your viewers haven't seen my play, but in the opening scene, the main song that really touches my heart from Shannon begins to play. The three actors come out on stage and they get into character. It's them as the actors, and they come on stage and then they get into the characters. And there's this moment of trust and bonding between the three of them because they know that for the next 60 minutes, what they're doing is extremely sensitive, is extremely difficult to watch. It's very heavy, and they wanted to show the audience that they themselves as actors were doing this out of a place of respect and love and safety. And for Tony then to weave in the music, I just, it blew me away. And it was something I never would have thought of, I never would have considered. And so because I stepped aside and let that team come in, something was born out of my initial idea. And that to me was what really made the play be as good as it was because of the individuals that Tony, Laura, just all of them.
Oh,
So I miss you guys. Just so if you're listening,
Amanda, you just provided
so
some incredible leadership learning for all of us. Step aside as a leader.
mhm,
Step aside and let go.
mhm,
Let go. You've planted the seed. And what you did was you empowered the others around you to be able to create from and create with. And how
yeah.
powerful.
Anyway, it was really funny because a month before the play launched, I actually was not part of rehearsals. I completely stepped away. So we went from table work where we were, finessing the screen to the dress rehearsal, and I had never seen it acted out, staged out, any of that. And so, and it was an extremely positive learning experience as a leader to own this and to have my name on it, but also to recognize that there was this entire team
Mhm.
that brought it
So,
to
what
fruition.
you are
So,
modeling, I think, for the listeners and for us as leaders is trust. There is such a foundation of
yeah.
trust that you placed in your team to get this
Hmm.
done and to do it in just such a beautiful way.
There was the two examples I gave where Madeline and Melissa, the two actresses that played that were in the play, kind of went off on their own, came
Mhm.
back, and then a whole new scene was derived, and then kind of under the direction, not kind of under the direction of Tony Ray Salmi, the concept of the music and the coming together of the actors at the beginning of the play. None of that would have happened if there wasn't the trust that was there. And so much of that trust came from the relationship building. The entire cast and crew really came about because of networking. And it was, this is the right person for this part, for
Mhm.
this role. And oddly enough, the theater world in DC and the surrounding area, for as strong as it is also very small. And so people they knew who each other were and they had worked with each other. So there was that intimacy there. But, the trust factor allowed me to step aside. If I didn't have that, I think it would have been a lot more like do it my way, if you equate that to the business world, if you're a
Mhm.
leader and you don't trust the people around you, you're giving directions. You're not um, giving them autonomy and independence because there isn't that trust that's there. So that's really, really important. And then if there isn't trust there, it's why does that exist? Is
Yeah.
that because of relationships, experiences? Is it bias that I'm bringing in from past experiences that are kind of tainting my view of my current environment? What was great about the theater experience is that I had never done this before. So they could have done something. I'm like, yeah, sure. I don't know. Like, who knows, right? Um, so I had a lot of learning to do as well. And they were there to teach me that. And because of that kind of mutual respect, that, okay, you're an expert at writing and you're an expert at your story. We're an expert in theater. Let's all do our roles and trust that. And I've been able to translate that lesson into every facet of my life, really, whether
Mm.
that's business, working at a company, whether that's consulting and serving my clients, even in my own interpersonal relationships, trusting my husband to do the dishes, right?
Yes.
So, and letting him do it his way, right? So, yeah, I think that's a big part of manifesting your goals, is trusting the people that you have brought along with you and that surround you to help you get it done.
I love that so much. It's trusting and especially in the things that you didn't know as much about, the theater world, etc. There's a vulnerability in that. And one of the things that I definitely talk with my clients about is that vulnerability is a strength for a leader.
Yeah,
And even the
yeah,
topic and having the courage to bring your story forward, such a vulnerability,
hmm,
such a strength. And I think that too many
yeah,
times we think about vulnerability as not being a strength. But I think that you've really demonstrated, to our listeners how that can be a real strength for them. So, Amanda, you have written these amazing children's books. Share with us what your inspiration was behind these books.
Uh, the answer to that question is very similar and is actually almost exactly the same as the play. Why did I write the play? And the reality of it is that I I saw an opportunity to address a difficult issues, but in the form of
Mm.
communicating that to children. So it's serendipitous that we're having this conversation. 4 years ago, the former administration left the Paris Climate Agreement, and I was visibly upset by that news. And our 4-year-old daughter, Alice, asked me why. And I needed to have a way to explain it to her. And I didn't want to say nothing was wrong. Something was very wrong in my mind. And she could sense that. And thus began Alice the Bee and the Cherry Trees. I had previously started my company, Be the Change, in December of 2016 after the election. So I was already on this bee theme. Bees work together to pollinate the world and make it a beautiful, brighter place. And they work very, very hard. And without them, we couldn't survive. So I already had the bee theme going. And as a result of kind of concocting this imaginary story in order to explain it to my daughter, she said, "Well, mommy, that would make a great children's book." And I was like, "Yes, yes, it would." And once again, I was in a room. This time I wasn't by myself, but I was with my daughter. And that's how Alice the Bee came to be. And I knew that I could write it. I do have an artistic eye and graphic design experience, but I really wanted it to be formally illustrated and be a true
Mm.
children's book. And I went on Instagram and I made a post that I was looking for a freelance illustrator. And a lady reached out to me from India, of all places, and we connected on social media. And she became my partner in illustrating from halfway around the world. And she now has a daughter of her own that she shares this story with. And so it was that kind of, again, serendipitous. Is, I don't even think it's serendipitous. I think it's actually just how the world works now. I don't find it to be chance or luck. It just brought us together, and we just kind of went on this journey together of using Kickstarter to fund the publication, which paid for the design and the printing and the marketing, the distribution, all of that. And so it was just a really fun journey. And I can't tell you how many parents I meet that will say to me, "Oh, I've always wanted to write a children's book." And I say, "Okay, like what? Nothing in this day and age, there really isn't anything stopping you except for yourself, right? So if
Yes.
you want to write a children's book, you don't need to take a workshop. I mean, you can, um, and it may make you a better writer, but it does go back to what you said, go before you know, and you'll just have to kind of learn on your way. And that's what I did with Alice the Bee, and I've pretty much been doing it ever since then. So
You are such an inspiration for manifesting goals, period. I think we are all taking some great takeaways here. So, but I do want to go back to a really important question around the current pandemic and how is this pandemic impacting sexual abuse victims? And is there anything that we as the listeners are able to do to help?
yeah, so one thing I just want to there's a difference between sexual abuse, the term that I've come to know as a dedicated volunteer of Jacada, it's the Jewish Coalition Against Domestic Abuse, is power-based violence. And so it's not just sexual abuse, which is one category of it, but power based violence really gets into what is known more commonly as domestic abuse, domestic violence, child abuse. It takes on other forms, financial abuse, um, elder abuse, which is another very common and growing concern. And really, all of these different variations come down to one individual inserting power over another. And the virus and the subsequent quarantining, I don't think it takes a lot to figure out that if you're already isolated, which is kind of the first step that abusers take with their victims in terms of isolating them from family, from their work, from their community, gaslighting them into thinking that they are the only person that can provide and give them what they need. And so you amplify that with having to be physically quarantined, which is a factor. Amplify that with the stress of quarantine. So somebody who might have just been maybe emotionally abusive because of pressures and stress and proximity, that has now turned into physical abuse or what have you. Elder abuse, they're finding, is also on the rise as families kind of are underneath these bubbles together. They might have brought in family members and have seen that as an opportunity to assert power over the elders in their family. So it's definitely a tragic outcome of the virus. I think it's shedding light in terms of how broken our system is in terms of giving these people the support that they need. In one case, in one instance, for example, Jacada, they have seen an increase, I believe, in 37% of calls to their hotline, and a 61% increase in their clinical services, a 49% increase in their legal services. So obviously the need is skyrocketing. But if there are also studies out there that have seen a up to 50% drop in hotline or quarantine their abusers and don't have the opportunity to make a phone call, to send an email. They're being monitored even more strictly than they were before. Going to the store or going to the office is no longer an opportunity for them to escape, right? Shelters are at max capacity because of the quarantine. So it's this trickle down effect that you see that's really wreaking havoc on the vulnerable population. For those that might be listening that are experiencing any one of these circumstances, even just a red flag of this, somebody controlling your money, somebody monitoring your online activity, that can lead to more dire power-based violence. And again, I just want to be clear that violence doesn't have to take the form of sexual or physical violence. That can be emotional or psychological violence as well. So knowing those warning signs for anyone that's listening, I want you to just take a moment and pause and listen to your instincts and look into your environment. And if this is not a safe place, please, you deserve help. You deserve happiness and you deserve safety. So just anyone that listening that needs that, if you do need support, I am an avid believer in Jaquita and the services that they offer. There's many, many resources out there. Many of these resources also have an exit button on their website. So if you go to jaquita.org, that's JCADA.org, you will see an exit button, which will take you to a blank Google screen. So a great workaround, again, for anyone experiencing this type of environment, use incognito, which doesn't track your cookies or anything. Jaquita, the National Hotline for Domestic Abuse, RAIN, all of these organizations have an exit button. So get there, get what you can, reach out to them in any way you can, and seek the help that you deserve and the safety that you deserve. For those that might be moved to support these victims, these organizations thrive and only exist because of financial sponsorship and grants. And the Violence Against Women Act was not renewed, which provides crucial funding for these types of organizations. With the new administration, President Biden was the original author of VAWA. And so we are very hopeful as an advocate community that these issues are going to be put back on the table and supported in the ways that they need to. The best way to support these organizations is by giving consistent funding. Even at $15 a month. I know that Jaquita and many other organizations have a membership program, and as a result, you get invited to their events. I just attended one yesterday. It was the intersection of power-based violence and race, which talks about how Black girls and women are 4 times more likely to be abducted, 4 times more likely to be sex and put into sex trafficking, and 4 times more likely to not be believed or to actually be turned into the criminals in the situation. And so that conversation is also really, really important to have as well. Hopefully I haven't gone down too much of a tangent, but I think wherever you find yourself, whichever side of this issue you are on, whether you need help or want to help, there are organizations out there that can provide that and that need it. So.
Amanda, thank you for educating us on this power-based violence and reminding everyone that they are worthy, whole, and deserve to have peace and to be safe, the basics that are humanity. And we appreciate all of the information for the resources. So I know our listeners are going to value and appreciate that as well. So
we can always include it in the show notes as well.
Yes.
For we are in the Montgomery County area, so the organizations that I tie to are very local. The Family Justice Center, Cicada, Treehouse Montgomery for Children, but I can certainly share those resources with people for those who need assistance or would like to help in those ways.
That is welcomed and amazing. So thank you so much. So Amanda, we ask all of our guests before we let them go a keystone question. What makes you feel strong?
I had a initial reaction to that question, and my initial reaction uh, was my voice, but it's kind of funny because I want to change it, and I think it is actually listening to my intuition. I have reached a place in both my personal and professional career in which I no longer question myself or my self worth. That doesn't mean that I don't have moments of doubt of how I should do things or that I don't look at things analytically. But, I talked about stepping up into your goals, stepping aside into your goals, and then stepping back. And for me, that stepping back actually makes me feel really strong because I know I have a partner in the universe. I know I have a partner in the people that I've surrounded myself with. And that trust that I'm on the right path, that the actions that I'm taking are setting are have allowed me to both arrive and become. And that is a very, very powerful place to be. And that has come as a result of stepping up, stepping aside, and stepping back. And so I feel strong when I know that the things that I'm doing, where I'm putting my energy, and how I'm doing it are all part of who I've always been and are a part of who I'm becoming. And that feels awesome. And that's what makes me strong.
You are strong, Amanda. And I love this, the arriving and becoming, and all based on listening to your intuition. I can't imagine anything more powerful.
Yeah.
So we definitely want to ask you, where can our listeners find you? Because they're going to want to connect with you. I know that. So how can our listeners find you?
Yeah, so on social media, it's Be the Change. So it's BEE, the Change 17. So that's both on Instagram and Facebook. So that's those are the two places that I am most active. And then you can always reach me at BeTheChange17 at Gmail, which is my business account. And all of that does get connected to my play, which is I Am Her, my children's books. So they're all kind of under that umbrella of Be the Change.
I love this.
Yeah.
Thank you, Amanda, for joining our show.
What you're doing with this podcast and the messaging that you're promoting, and it's just truly, I feel honored to be a part of it. So.
Well,
Yeah.
we are honored to have you, and thank you for your insights and tips on manifesting your goals and making the world a better place.
Yeah.
And I want to thank our listeners as well. We hope that you were inspired to manifest your goals and step into your leadership. Thank you for listening. If you are interested in supporting this content, please hit the subscribe button. This will help to bring much needed funding to bring quality programming to our listeners like you. Your support is greatly appreciated. We encourage you to leave comments. If you have suggestions for leadership topics, please provide those in the comments and we will strive to address those in upcoming episodes. It is time to step into your power. The world needs your leadership. Together we are strong. Strong women, stronger world.